Hey, welcome everybody to Omaha Data Science Academy, Business Intelligence in fall of 2005. This is SQL 101 class, and this is our first class on data manipulation basics. I'm Jeremy Bergman. I'm the instructor for this class, and I'll do an introduction this first hour, but first, go ahead and cover the topics in this class and the course syllabus. And it looks awfully small on the screen, so let's try to make this a little bit bigger. This is a huge TV that I'm using. I can barely see all the way over there too. Let's see if I can zoom. See if we can do 200%, and that makes it a little bit better. Yeah, that's better. Anyway, we'll go step by step. Like I said, Omaha Data Science Academy, this is part of the business intelligence track. SQL 101, data manipulation and management. Tonight's the first class. In this, it'll be covering some of the basics. This is the fall 2025 semester. This class will run from October 20th till November 17th of this year, depending on the start of Python class. If Python starts on November 17th, we'll change that back to the following Wednesday. But this class is every Monday and Wednesday, except for this first Wednesday coming up here on the 22nd. We won't have class. I introduced myself briefly. We'll do a full introduction here in a minute. So the course objective for this class will teach students how to use SQL programming language to query, access, store, clean, and design structured data sets within a relational database environment. So relational database environment I like to think of it as like an Excel spreadsheet. Almost everybody's used Excel, and you can do little tables or crosstabs within Excel. A relational database is the same thing. You can think of the database as like an entire Excel sheet, and then you could think of tables as like the little tabs inside of it. A relational database management and system and environment is just like almost like a super Excel spreadsheet where you can store those tabular data sources, and then you could write code to be able to do all of these different things. So I like to say even more useful than Excel because there's a lot of power behind being able to write code to get the data that you need and do the things that you want. And we'll learn all about that in this class. So specifically some of the topics we'll learn, which we'll learn the SQL programming language to help do that. We'll learn about data cleansing, transformation, being able to clean data, being able to summarize it or do lots of different things with it to get the data that you need, being able to extract and load data into a database, some advanced database functions near the end of the class, and SQL techniques and performance for analysis. All of this using the database called MySql server. So within this class, I try to be as non-specific about technology as I can. Like the skills that you learn here with the SQL programming language will translate to almost all databases that you would use. We happen to use MySql database because I think it's one of the easiest. And generally everything you'll learn in this class, whether it's MySql or you'll hear different types of databases in business, you'll hear like maybe IBM DB2 or an Oracle database or a Microsoft SQL server. They're really all SQL relational databases with just small differences. So teach you all the fundamentals here of SQL that apply mostly across all those database systems. So if you learn MySql, SQL on MySQL server, you'll know it across all of them. Yeah. The goal of it's to provide that language and those data relational database skills to manipulate data within business intelligence, data science projects. Some of these skills include using the SQL programming language to obtain data via queries, aggregations, and joins. If some of this doesn't mean a whole lot to you, that's okay. We'll learn it throughout the class. We'll define these and learn it throughout the class. Combining disparate data sets for analysis. One of the most powerful things in SQL is that you can take like 2 of those Excel tabs or tables, blend them together, and combine them for analysis. Really powerful to be able to do that instead of having to do it manually by hand. You'll perform standard data extraction, cleaning, transformation. You'll store and manage data within the relational database environment. So you can store data within tables, so it doesn't just disappear. You can take that data, you can put it in a table, and then be able to use it later. You'll do some advanced querying and advanced database functionality near the end of class. So advanced database as far as some things that aren't necessarily specific to the basics of SQL, but things that you would use most likely as a data analyst. So some stored procedures, being able to build your own functions, and then some advanced queries for data analysis, for analyzing data, and some techniques to help you get data faster. Right. So grading will be on a pass-fail basis per assignment by the instructor. We'll have 4 assignments in this class, more or less 1 after every week. If we cut it down, I'll do 3 assignments instead of 4 assignments, because we'll combine a couple of topics and do 3 homeworks. So I'll find out about that November 17th date to see how we want to do homework. So we'll have either 3 or 4 homework assignments. Not intended to take up your whole weekend, just a couple hours for you to like practice the skills that you learned in class, maybe 3 to 5 hours worth of work outside of class. It'll cover the topics that we covered during that week of class. So we'll sign it on Monday, and it'll be due the following Monday. So grading, I'll try to provide feedback as fast as I can. Sometimes work gets in the way, but I'll try to grade these and provide feedback and get those back to students in a timely manner. So assignments, as I said, these are hands-on exercises that reinforce classroom material. They'll be designed after each week of lecture to provide practice on the materials taught during those classes. One of the things is I'm okay with everyone at everybody here is like working other jobs or doing other things. Try to make them do like the following Monday, but if you fall behind on it, it's okay. But we just want to try to keep up as much as we can during class, so you don't have like all this work at the end of class. Happens to students every semester, you get busy and everything. So just staying up with those as much as possible and not falling behind in class. It moves fairly fast. You learn SQL programming language in 4 weeks. If you fall behind, just let me know. I'm here to help you out with that too. And it's okay. I'm here to help, but trying to keep up with it as much as possible. It'll be the same with quizzes. We'll have 3 quizzes. They'll cover the previous 2 class lectures. I think that I will give those out those will be on Wednesdays over the previous 2 lectures. It's kind of to really recap, like SQL class is cumulative. So when you learn one topic and one topic, they build on they build upon themselves. This is like to just have you remember what you learned in the previous lectures. That's intent on the quizzes. So it's not like a pop quiz over the current lectures. That's what you learned in the previous 2 lectures. I think it provides a good recap and some feedback, immediate feedback to you on how you're doing. So you'll take the quiz, you'll get a score, and then it'll give you your answers back right away. And then I will assign those. I'll provide links and sign those. So if you're worried about this class, as long as you put in good efforts and give the assignments a try, most people do pretty well on the quizzes and the exams. The exam's a final examination. I allow that to be a take-home assignment. Due on the date of the final class, I'll assign it the class before. It's open book and open notes, just like in real life. Multiple choice questions. You might do some diagramming, just like how 2 tables relate to each other. They call it relations when you're combining data from 2 different tables. And then some short answer questions that kind of test your conceptual knowledge. I try to make these things potentially what you'd be asked for in a job interview, like skills-related job interview. But I also like to teach some like just conceptual thinking about data and databases near the end of this class. Some of it's like pretty straightforward skill at the beginning, but when you start joining data and doing more advanced things, you really have to kind of think about like what the code and the database is doing behind the scenes. So testing you on some of that. I didn't put it in this class, in the syllabus. I forgot to do it. But what I'd like to do the final class is I have some additional materials that I'd like to cover, and I'd like to try to do some mock interview questions. So it's kind of putting people on the spot a little bit, but so is a job interview. So just asking people in the class, like things that'd be on a job interview, and see if we can work through it together and how we would respond to it. So I got that advice from someone. I was thinking, we're talking about it and we're like, how could we make these classes even better? And like people feel like not only did they learn the skills, that they could go to a job interview and be able to like talk about the things that they did in class. And it's really hard to do that. Even for me doing this for 20 years, like you get put on the spot and then I panic. And then I'm like, I always look these things up, but I don't usually, or you know it, but like you can't do it on the spot for whatever reason. We're going to give that a try. We're going to give it a try. It'll be like a fun exercise. It won't be graded or anything like that, just to see what everybody learned and some practical skills. So we're going to try that for the first time along with our LLS. This is the first LMS, the management system, the LearnWorlds management system. We'll have a few bumps along the way there because we just got it set up, but we'll go through all those together. So it's designed like it's a learning management system. It's supposed to like bring all the content together in one place. And then there's stuff like, I could bring it up here. It might be a good time to do that, actually. Let me pull this over. Bring it up in my browser. We're doing this for the first time. So if you've ever taken a lot of college classes are like this, now we're officially accredited as a school. Part of that is to learn to use a learning management system like this. But the idea is that you can go to your course and then you have all the content and learning objects right there instead of how I've traditionally done it, just like putting them in Slack. So one of the big things will be just to make sure everybody does have access to this. And then you have things like I can put videos here or other learning objects. There's a message board here that we can use, although I personally prefer Slack for right now, so we'll just use Slack instead of the message boards in here. And then I could post homeworks and grades out there. I'm not quite to that point yet, but we'll try to work on that as much as we can throughout the semester. I just bring it up because probably be slightly painful as we go through this, but shouldn't be too bad. Yeah. So class schedule, class 1 tonight is data manipulation basics. So the second part of the syllabus just lists each class. Class 1, class 2, class 3, and the topics that we cover each hour. So right now we're covering syllabus, introductions, and we'll do a quick class overview, learn some skills. And then usually the last hour we try to do a lab or some practical hands-on examples. But the first class tonight will be the basics. Class 2, you'll get your hands already next Monday on SQL code to be able to do basics. Basics of data that's stored in a database, being able to get that and exactly the information that you want from it. We'll do extracting and storing data. So how do you take data and store it in a table so that you can reuse it over and over? Joining and merging data, how do you bring those all together in the way that you need it to be for analysis? And then cleaning data, some practical skills, some advanced SQL and performance that you may use in real life if you're a business intelligence analyst or data analyst. And then some advanced database functions that you're likely to use. I won't go into detail there, but it's easy. It will be easy enough if we were one class short for me to combine either class 6 or 7 or class 7 and 8 together. It's something that we'll do. We'd probably combine class 6 and 7, make it one class shorter. So that's everything that's contained in the syllabus. So class schedule and outlines, a little bit a brief introduction of me and how you can get a hold of me. The best way to get a hold of me is probably Slack. I'm pretty attentive to that during SQL class, and then we use it at contemporary analysis a lot. So I'm checking on it all day. May not get back to you right away on your question, but I'll do my best to respond out of it. And it's also a good way to share files and queries and like screenshots of challenges that you have and everything. So yeah, that's everything here. If you have questions about the class or syllabus, please let me know. I don't really change this. If I change it, I'll try to post it in the LearnWorlds and let everybody know that I made a change to the syllabus. But I've taught this class a bunch of times, so I don't really make too many changes to it. But if I do, I'll let you know. Yeah. I'll go ahead and do an introduction of myself. All right, happy to have everyone here in this class. Let's see if we can do a slideshow from the beginning. We covered all about this class. So this is me. I like the tagline that I created here. This is my LinkedIn profile. But I like to create value, especially with data, through education, tech innovation, and entrepreneurship. So education, Omaha Data Science Academy is a big part of that. Tech innovation, generally in business intelligence, in analytics. But over the last year, I have expanded my consulting into artificial intelligence and AI, some interesting projects. What's good about that is that it's all underneath the covers. It's data, essentially. And then entrepreneurship, whether that's consulting or helping generally help small or medium-sized businesses figure out how to use their data in the best way possible. A lot of times businesses, they won't even be exactly sure how to get started with data. And it usually starts with something small and grows into something bigger. And I help advise do that. Help advise them on how to do that. I'm also a store owner too. We have my family owns boba tea store. So if anyone's interested in that, my girls pretty much run that. So I can't take that much credit for it.
Did you used to be in Exotic?
There was one there over in that area, in the that dining area. There's a boba tea one over there. No, ours is called the Boba Bar. We're like out west on like 171st and Center in Legacy Plaza.
Oh, okay.
It's a boba tea, so it's like, have you heard of it? Yeah. Lots of people haven't heard of it, surprisingly. So I'm always doing my education piece and like trying to tell people, and they're like, why would you put bubbles in the bottom of a drink? And I'm like,
Do they burst?
yeah, there's a couple of different types. So there's tapioca that's kind of chewy, and then there are a lot of bursting ones, but there are also jellies that you can put in it if you don't like that.
When they burst to me, it's almost like a grape.
It is like that. They have the flavor in it, and it goes pretty well sometimes with a different flavor. My favorite is probably matcha with mango in it. You have the mango bursting in the bottom, but
That's the one.
no, I like talking about it anyway. I won't spend too much time. I won't upsell everybody on it. But my experience, it's now 18 years doing business intelligence and analytics. It's gone by pretty fast. 17 years ago was very much different back then, but even back then, we had their relational databases. We'll talk about that in the first lecture. So using SQL and relational database is like a foundation that I've used like through my whole career, but I've done a little bit of everything related to data. Started in bank finance and all the way to advanced analytics, data mining, data science, data engineering, been in market research, and then managed teams, and then moved to consulting. So help business leaders. Now I decided help business leaders with their data challenges. That's what I do for consulting, mostly technologies, help people with their how to even get started with data, how they should bring it all together, help with visualization for the first time. So the first time, a lot of people don't even know necessarily like how to look at the data. And then once they start seeing it, it's like, wow, can we have more of that? So help them a bit with data visualization, advanced analytics, and self-service. Just recently getting into AI consulting. It's an interesting journey, but it's all builds upon the skills that I've learned over time. Education, I started in computer science. I'm a data guy, like Moneyball guy. So master's degree in statistics, and then went back to Creighton for an MBA to do management consulting. Well, I started to do my own consulting. About me, Nebraska born. I'm a father of 3 girls. They're actually much older than that. That's the Grafton Wool version of the slide. So I have a 17-year-old. She's a senior in high school. A 13-year-old and 7-year-old. Marion. So she is going into nursing. I talked to her, trying to talk her into data, but she's not interested. I don't blame her. Maybe my middle daughter might. She probably won't either. Maybe I have a chance with my youngest. Tech entrepreneur and consultant. Let's talk about entrepreneurship. Big small business owner, and then help. I like helping small and medium-sized businesses with their challenges even more than big companies. I do some big company consulting too. Sports fan of different teams. Hobbies are analysis and statistics. So even when I'm not doing data, I'm still doing data, business news, reading exercise, and teaching classes.
How's that curriculum?
Not that well the last week, but overall pretty good. When I started like, it's up and down. It's a roller coaster ride. I'd say that. I don't know if I'm winning overall or not. I think I lost a lot at first, but I'm getting a little bit better.
Yeah, I don't understand it, so we'll back to this side of it. I don't understand. I don't either.
I'd say
That's how it's like, well,
if you want to be safe, just invest in stocks instead.
okay.
I trade a little bit sometimes, not always so successfully, but I try. I have interest in it. I like finance and financial markets and stuff like that. So student introduction, some of the things I'd like you to put, you can put it in Slack to introduce yourself. Just telling me how to pronounce your name. If I've already butchered it, I apologize. Where you're from, where you're from originally, what your current job or field of expertise is, and what brings you into this class, and then what type of things do you hope to get out of the class. So that especially those final two questions help me understand where students are coming from. I can give you good advice, maybe some guided examples, and then some of the things I can additionally focus on in the class. So what we like to share as part of Data Science Academy is some of our philosophy. So I have both like a data scientist and a data analyst philosophy. And like, what is a data analyst? And what is a data scientist? So data scientist is like this mythical person who has like all these skills. In reality, you probably don't have all these skills. But what I found in data is like, usually you learn something new, like a new technology or a new process or a programming language to be able to do something new in a better way. So maybe you're learning some math and statistics. I've learned a lot about machine learning or AI over the last couple of years. It's like pretty much new to me, like as everybody else. You're constantly learning. You're constantly learning either math or statistics, programming languages, ways to communicate data in a more effective way. Like, I think your first class was data visualization. Yeah, doing data visualization to communicate data and show it in the right way. And then even soft skills, so knowing your business, knowing systems and processes, being a problem solver, and just being an advisor and being influential. I think they're all skills. I like the data science philosophy because it brings everything together. Definitely not going to be expected to do all of those things in this class. I teach data engineering classes through Data Science Academy also. That's where we cover a lot more of this stuff out of SQL databases. SQL databases is a good start for working with data. And then there's a whole bunch of other technologies that you can use for different problems and challenges with data. Either that or through Data Science Academy, you may take machine learning classes with, I was thinking Paige, but it's the other gal, and I can't think of her name right now, but she's really bright. She works over here at Physicians Mutual. She teaches those classes. It's like building a mathematical model. So think of like you're predicting things, or even predicting. A better example is, say you have a picture of a cat and you have like 500 pictures of it. You can actually create a model to try to predict that that picture is a cat. and you can kind of in a way teach a computer to learn from it. So you could show it a picture of a cat, and then you show it a picture of a dog, and you say, no, that's not a cat, that's a dog. Or you show it a cow, and it's like, that's a cow, not a cat. And then it can keep updating with that information, and then computers can learn from it. So it's like kind of like teaching the computer like a task using like an algorithm. AI is really similar. AI is teaching. It's similar to machine learning. It's learning, but it's trained to teach it to think like a person and do things like a person instead, and make decisions like a person. Machine learning is just tasks in general. Teaching it like AI is like a specific type of machine learning where you're trying to make it like human-like decisions. So all data and algorithms and those methods, statistical methods and technologies underneath the covers. Yeah, so there's a ton that you can learn about data, with SQL being a good start at just being able to use data that's in a tabular format. So you'd say, what is a data analyst? So I'd say this role is a role that would most commonly use SQL and relational database. Very common in a day-to-day like job of a data analyst to use relational database. So especially these type classes, these 3 classes that you learn in the business intelligence track, is the data visualization, the relational database, and Python. Those 3 skills will make you a pretty decent data analyst. And that's the way we design it too. So a data analyst is somebody who collects, processes, and performs, and not even sometimes statistical analysis, just analysis on data set to identify trends, patterns, and insights that can guide business decisions. Oftentimes, you're also putting together things like reports and dashboards to help people make data-driven decisions. Data analysts use various tools. You're using SQL for database querying. Use Excel for data manipulation. I still, not to say anything bad about Excel at the beginning of class, I use Excel a lot still, just to put data in a tabular format and do some calculations and work with it. SQL, use Excel often. Python, to be able to do statistical analysis, Python or R, but also Python for a lot of just being able to load data, do things that you need to, and potentially even load it into a database. There's a lot that you can do with Python programming language. You'll learn that in the next class. Tableau, Power BI, or other data visualization tools is huge for a data analyst because it's all about taking data and representing it in a meaningful way for the person. For like I always think of them as your customer. It's like somebody asks you for data, they have a challenge, and it's kind of up to you as a data analyst to be like, what data do I need, and what's the best way to represent that to the person who needs the data, like your customer who needs the data. And then statistics and probability helps out with that, especially like sample size. Like, would be a good example. Maybe you have, I'm just doing this on the fly, I always think of sports. So like maybe a basketball player has shot 3 free throws and misses all of them, but maybe those 3 free throws aren't representative of how they would do over 50 or 100 shots. So understanding like basic like sample size and statistics and stuff like that is helpful for a data analyst. So the responsibilities, you have data gathering and prep. That's a huge one. You're likely getting that out of some database oftentimes, whether it's like an application, like an ERP system or a data warehouse. A data warehouse would be like a database that already stores all the data that you need for you. Data analysis skills and being able to interpret data, being able to take that data, put it in reports and present it. Working with people, I think that's an underestimated part of this. So it's one of my favorite students has gone through a bunch of my classes, and she's like, I just want to write code and sit behind a desk, and that's it. And then I'm like, I'm like, I hear you, but like, you've got to this is a job that you work with people too, because you get the data and you need to understand it. You have to work together to, one, understand the data that you have, and then two, have a common understanding, take that data and represent it in the way that they need to. It just takes working with people sometimes. It used to not always be that way, but more and more data is like that. You're collaborating with people to help them solve problems, which is why I like the field so much. I'm a problem solver myself, consultant problem solver. Strong analytical skills for problem solving, exactly. System and process understanding. So one of the big things about understanding data and how to use it is what's the context? What system is it coming from? How is it produced? What rules is it used to be producing it? And then how you take that data and you turn it into information. And all of those is a role of data analysts. That is what makes data analysts super valuable, I think, is that part. On top of the skills, having excellent communication skills. And then, of course, whenever you're working with data, some attention to detail. Then I have one more slide. It's pretty similar. But understanding the role of the data analyst, you're gathering data, you're cleaning up the data. So going from left to right, this is kind of your main steps. Collecting the data from diverse sources. It's not always just in databases. Maybe it's spreadsheets. Maybe it's a text file. Bringing it all together, cleaning it up, doing your analysis or summarization, and then visualizing that data. An example would be a Google data analyst. So they support projects for search algorithms, YouTube optimization, marketing, so forth. So that's all about being a data analyst and introductions. And I'd like to take 2 breaks in this class, one after the first hour and one after the second hour. And so far we're on track to do that. Am I forgetting anything? No, so we'll set up all the tools at the end of this class, or in the final hour of this class. And we will do this first lecture here after we take a short break here at 7 o'clock. So I'll give everyone a 10-minute break. So what I like to do is usually instead of introductions, we do a short class review, and then we'll do a introductory lecture to each class. The second hour would usually dive deeper into that subject. And then the third hour, we do hands-on exercises or answer questions to homeworks or quizzes or whatever it might be. So this first class is structured a little different, that we do introduction and then our lecture. But in general, we will do this structure and then have a break, about a 10-minute break between after hour one and after hour 2. I'll go ahead and let everyone have a break. Let's do 10-minute break, 6:58. This lecture is pretty easy going tonight, so we'll come back at 7:10. Grab a snack. I could use a stretch and everything, probably another Diet Mountain Dew. I will be back here shortly with everyone. So see you at 7:10. And if you get a chance, or in that other slide, just a short description or just a short introduction about yourself. Answer some of those questions. All right, we'll be back at 7:10. Yeah, in Slack. You can just drop it. I didn't mention that today. Just drop it here in the chat so everybody can see. Kind of introduces everybody to each other. And personally, like, I don't want to call on everyone. I hate when I have to do that myself. So like when you're new to a class and then everybody's like, please do an introduction to yourself. I think it's fine to just drop it in here. Sorry, I'm going to get another drink and I'll be back in a minute. There is whole snacks there and some water down below, and just around the corner there's a soda fridge if anybody wants. What's that?
I said I want to go feed the meter.
Go feed the meter. There have been a couple times that I forgot that I got away with it, but I got a ticket once.
Yeah.
So you never know when, like, that's going to be.
Yeah. I remember I got a warning when I said, look,
Usually the first time they're good about giving you a warning. Second time, though, they get you $15. Which isn't the end of the world. I try not to forget. But sometimes it happens. It's like my mind's on class or something else and I forget to do it. Okay, I will be right back.
I'm trying to bring up my slide too, because I'm looking at this and, oh, yeah.
You put in Slack,
Slack.
what does it say?
What's that? Yeah, OMA DSA. It's this one with the lock on it. It says SQL 101.
Yeah, I'm in there. What did you put in there what we're supposed to?
Here, I can just drop that introductions thing in there. It's probably a good idea to do that.
So I restarted it.
Just copy and paste. No problem. I just want to copy that whole slide. Copy. There we go, I think. Yeah, that's okay. Okay, I put just a little slide there with introductions, some questions that you can answer. Help guide you with the introduction. Okay, I'll be back in a minute. am back. I'll start in a few minutes. This one. Do I see private chat? Rezu, I will see if the screen is still frozen here. I didn't see your comment in the StreamYard chat. Hopefully now you can see the main lecture. Your overview of data manipulation and management, and then the class structure that I covered right before break. If it's still frozen, let me know. Or if it's not, let me know too. Either way. One of the things I try to do as much in this class as possible, the introductions help. So I try to relate the data as much as I can in my experience to whatever work or interest that you have. In particular, as I'm going through things, try to think of some examples and how you might use it in your jobs. I've seen in a bunch of different industries and seen just, I think about everything, then I see something new. Or I work with a new client and learn something new. I learned about, the beginning of the year, I worked with a client and learned all about farm equipment repair. Like work codes and what the different jobs were and why they built the way they did. You get to learn a lot when you work with data. Get to learn a lot about how the business and systems work and stuff like that. It's more interesting than you'd think, I guess. It's interesting you see certain things in the data and you're like, I wonder why it's like that or they do that. And they'll explain it to you. That's why it's essential. Like communications is essential. The data, doing data. Even if you went into programming, unless you're just like a lone wolf who created everything, oftentimes you are still talking to people and trying to understand their challenge. Maybe there are a few roles in tech where you still could go and not talk to anybody all day, but it's not really one of those.
How many people want to know, they want to know more about, like, how did you get there?
Yeah. Why are the numbers the way they are? Why are sales down today? People can get crazy with it too. Then you have to show them like, hey, sales are down today, but they're up 40% over the last day or last 3 months. That's like crypto too. I'm up on crypto overall, but when it goes down, it's hard. When it goes down suddenly, it's volatile. Oh, Mary, you have quite a background.
Yeah, I've come on through an interesting path.
There was, in the last class, his name was Matt. He'd been a developer his whole life. And I mean, know a little bit about relational databases, so it made class relatively easy, but not in the sense of working with data. He's asked to do more and more reporting and working with data, which is a little bit different than how you use databases with applications. Using it with data is a little bit different. Using it data, the basics are the same, but it's a little bit of different thought. Really have to think about what that other person might be looking for, understanding the systems and processes. Not that you don't have to do that as a application developer too, but I went past 7:10, didn't I? That's okay. Give everyone just a minute before I start on lecture. We have plenty of time today. Enterprise architect, I know about that. I've been a data architect. I've been a data architect, so doing technology, people process and technology and data across the organ. Data is all wrapped into it, but think of people, process, and technology. It's an architect, systems, and specifically focused on data, how the organization utilizes data. And AI is just its own creature now, totally different way of using data, different types of data too, not just numerical data, like images and logs, and LLMs is like web pages, text. You can do some of that in relational database too, but whole new set of technologies and thinking of ways of using data. Happy to do that for you, Tammy.
I'm from Omaha.
Oh, you aren't from Omaha?
I'm from Omaha, but I live in
Oh, that is a long drive.
Yeah. And that's okay, because I can take State Street. I can really get downtown. It's when I get downtown, I'm like, okay, no turn around. Okay, no, it's just these one-end, dead-end streets. Yeah, so it is.
There's no good way to get to this side of downtown unless I'm coming in through Leavenworth the other way.
Yes.
Otherwise, if you're coming in from the north, there's no good way to get over here.
And the way that you can go, I promise you, 2 weeks ago, I had it mapped out because I got lost enough. And then today I tried to do that same route, and I'm like, okay, it's shut down. So it's like, all right.
7:15. I'll go ahead and get started with lectures. So we have some time to set up everything we need and make sure we're good to go for the rest of the class. All right. Go ahead and make sure my screen is shared here. Okay, it looks like if anyone's having any challenges with screen frozen, I probably see it a little bit better if you drop it into Slack. I often miss this chat that's inside of StreamYard to show. I miss that one quite a bit. If you drop it into Slack, I'll do my best to see see your message. If it's still frozen, just let me know. And if it's been like a couple minutes, just go ahead and shout it out. Here, you can unmute and shout it out. No issues with Slack, just not working at all. They'll take a look at it. We'll take a look at it in the third hour, make sure everything's good to go. All right. For now, not too big of a deal because I have everything up. Okay. From beginning. Okay. So this is class number 1 in SQL 101 class. Initially, this class was titled Data Manipulation and Management. It is data manipulation and management if you think of using a SQL programming language to be able to get data, manipulate it, store it, and manage it. I still keep the title. Original title is true. We usually call it SQL 101, but the first, that's why I kept the title of it, because it's true what you do with the SQL. Programming language is you manipulate and manage data. This class is an overview of the basics of data manipulation and management and SQL programming language and relational database. And it'll give you a good overview for the rest of the topics in this class. So right before the beginning of the end of last hour, I talked about how these classes are structured. In a typical class outside of today, we'll do a quiz, weekly quiz that covers a little bit of the previous content just as a refresher. He'll do a topic 1 lecture, so it's an introductory lecture to the new topic. Hour 2, you go a little bit more hands-on and a little bit more in-depth with emphasis on how you apply those concepts. Then third hour is really like getting your hands on it, understanding it, working with data in the SQL programming language. And then it's either assigning homework or answering any questions about the class or homeworks or quizzes or anything that you have. So I try to make hour 3 like a more hands-on working, like applying what you know. So kind of thinking of it as like I teach the lectures, like we start to do these together with hands-on exercises and more in-depth than lectures or second hour. And then you do the homework or quizzes and those things, so you build those skills. So what is the need for data manipulation? So at the beginning of each lecture, I like to talk about like what is the purpose of what we're learning. So you're going to see this slide throughout this class because there are different aspects of like why you would use SQL for data manipulation. Let me get my cursor over there if I can. So a few different things that you're going to do is that you're going to create and throughout this class is create and extract data by creating new data sets and combining those tabular data sets. You'll transform data using queries. Aggregations are like functions that you use, like summing data or doing an average of data or median or something like that. So you have a big list of data, a whole bunch of values. You can use a function to be able to summarize or aggregate all of those. In the third lecture, we'll do adding and removing or modifying data. You're really manipulating it there. And then extracting and storing data. So storing and retrieving it. So manipulating data would be like, if you already have data stored, you can add more data to it. You can delete some data or update it even. And then storage and retrieval is like putting that data in a database, in a table, so that you can use it later, like that tabular structure like you have in Excel. You'll see this throughout the class because it covers pretty well the different topics in this class. So the need for data manipulation using SQL is kind of fourfold with each one of those data points, or each one of those bullet points that we'll cover throughout the class. And then I'll highlight at the beginning of each lecture which one we're covering. Right, so class 1 objectives. Basic data terminology. So this is huge for anybody who's ever worked in tech. It's like its own language that people are speaking. I had my first job and remember being so anxious is banking. They're fairly technical, so they're using technical terms, and then they're using banking terms on top of it. So like, it felt like for the first year, I didn't have like any idea what anybody was talking about. Like, made me anxious. We'll cover some of that so that you can speak some of that lingo. Then you'll say, what is SQL? Why learn it? We've covered it a little bit, but we'll cover it more in depth here. What is a SQL query? And then how do you obtain structured data using SQL clauses? So within SQL, you have different parts of the SQL query that you'll write to help guide the database to what data that you want back from it. Those are your clauses, and we'll learn like how to structure a SQL query today. So what's a relational database? What is a table? And then how is data structured within the table? So I've talked about that a little bit. We'll learn about it. What are the most common SQL data types? So there are a number of different data types that you can store within a relational database table. You can store things like numbers. You can store values like true or false. You can store text values. Maybe if you're listing all the states, one of them would be Nebraska, one of them would be Iowa. You can store all that information. There are a couple different other types. You can store dates in there. So dates and times, very important within databases to know when events happened. And there are a few other data types too that we'll cover. And then at the end, I'll give you some resources on how you can learn more about specific topics in SQL. I also put a Microsoft Word document into Slack. I'll give you some additional resources by different topics also. But we'll cover these near the end of class. Okay. So basic data terminology. This is a part I say is like learning the lingo that people like take for granted that other people know in tech. So some basic terminology is a server. So we will be using a database management server in this class, a MySql database management server. So a server is just like that computer that hosts the database or other services that applications can access and utilize. So we're going to use a MySql server that you can connect to that has the hardware and this application that holds the databases and then data within the database tables and that you can process the data with. So basically the server is that computer that MySql lives on. So the database itself is all of these little containers that hold structured information data in the form of tables. So tables are like these tabular structures that you can store data in, like an Excel spreadsheet. And then we have a couple of different other things that we'll learn about through the class called views. Views are like little code snippets that you can save and rerun. And then some other entities that we'll learn about in the advanced part of SQL. So you have a schema. So a schema describes how a table database is organized and designed. So within MySql, they use these terms interchangeably, a database and a schema, because basically you can create these databases and then within them you described how they are organized and arranged by tables and the different objects. Within some databases, you have database management systems like Microsoft SQL Server, where you'd have the database, and then you could have little schemas within this. So it's like little logical arrangements within the database. For this class, in MySQL, database and schemas are the same. If I mention schema, it's just the same as the database. In different databases, it likely be a little bit different, but for the purpose of this class, database and schemas are the same. Tables are the kind of like that document or crosstab that contains columns, rows, and cell values. So you have your columns. Those are the names of your fields or how you can refer to all these different values. So if you think about this, you have your ID, which identifies each row. You have the name of your country. In the name field, you have all the names of the different countries. In country codes, you have a short, like 3-digit description of each one of those. It stores all of those. In districts and population. So your population column or field will store all of those numeric values of the population. So just like an Excel sheet, from top to bottom and right to left, these are your columns that define like a name for what you're storing in that column. And then you have each row that stores each record individually, each country or record individually. So just that, columns are your attributes. This is how you'd refer to all of these values. Your rows are a record of an event. So for the first country, you'd have Kabul, Afghanistan, in the Kabul district with a population of 1.78 million, 1,780,000. And that's one record. And then you just keep entering these countries in. And then you get your rows by columns. And then finally, a query is a request for data from the database server. This is about as simple as a query will get. Is that you can select your columns and you'll refer to those by column names from your database .table name. So in this database, we're doing from the world database and the city table, world.city, select all those columns and you get that result. So that's like, we won't do a lot of code in here, but it's good to illustrate how databases and tables and columns and rows work and how you could obtain it. This is kind of like in programming, they say like a hello world. They have you do that first so that you like successfully run something. This would be like your hello world once we get your software installed. So what is SQL? So describe it in 100 or less words. If you notice, if you recognize this is like an OpenAI prompt. So I haven't mentioned it in this class, but I highly encourage the use of generative AI, which is either relational database or, I get a relational database on the brain. Large language models like OpenAI. I particularly use Claude for development purposes. Not to necessarily just like give you the answers, but help you when you have a question or you're stuck on something or you need a definition. Just go and say, what is SQL or what is, maybe it can give you an illustration. Like if you're having a hard time, when we get to the point where we're updating data in a table, be like, give me an example of a table update statement that updates certain values. Like do like a before and after or something. And they'll generate these type of things perfectly. So utilize it to like help you get through barriers and help with your learning is what I'm highly about and what I educate people about. Or if you're doing research on a problem, if you Specifically, we'll see like sometimes you'll have error messages. You can copy your query, put it in generative AI, and it'll help you find the issue with it instead of having to struggle with it. But then you can see like, oh, why did that error occur? Then it helps you out so much faster by like doing research or help you troubleshoot things. Highly encouraged. I'm like, with generative AI, I'm talking to all my clients about how you can help yourself with research or automation or learning or being more creative. So you'll notice that's a prompt, OpenAI prompt. So structured query language, what is it? In less than 100 words. You say it's a programming language used to manage and manipulate relational databases, used to create, modify, and query databases to retrieve, insert, update, and delete data. And SQL is supported by most relational database management systems as standard language with a specific syntax and set of rules. That's why I teach MySql, is because it's probably the most generic out of all of these, and the syntax applies pretty well across all these different database management systems, like I talked about earlier. Servers can be run locally or virtually in the cloud. In this class, we're actually using a cloud server, Microsoft, or MySQL server. And in the cloud, it's in Microsoft Azure. So you don't have to have a computer that's running it. You can just ask Microsoft to run the server. SQL's been around for a long time. It's just not, no matter how much data changes, and even in the AI age, you're always going to see relational databases, especially with systems like ERP systems, or which is like your inventory management and planning and sales systems and supply chain, or maybe it's a CRM system, customer relationship management, you're using for marketing and sales. It's always like going to have some relational database behind the scenes to capture transactions. And even in data, it's one of the most efficient ways to store data still, especially tabular data. Why it's also not going away is it's been around since 1970. So many people know about SQL and the SQL programming language and relational databases. It's all on top. If you ever take computer science, it's all based on relational mathematics. So it's like robust and sound, and millions of people know about the technology. It's still going to be used forever, so it's a good skill. It's like a fundamental skill to learn as you learn more about working with data. So the different components of SQL and relational database is that you have your database management system. So that just manages all of the databases that you create within that server. The management system's like the underlying logic and technology that allows you to write SQL query or store data and do all these different things. So underneath of it, there are a couple of different SQL components. So you'll see DML, DDL, DCL, and TCL. For the purpose of this class, we're really going to focus on these first two. And the second two are more of what you would learn about in the data engineering classes I teach. These are pretty advanced. May cover them at the end of class. But these are more like database administration things. But to talk a little bit more about what each one of these is the first one's your data manipulation language. So when you see CRUD operations, it's create, read, update, and delete. This is the type of stuff that you do if you have data that's stored. You either obtain it, you insert new data, you're updating data that already exists in a table, or you're deleting data from it. So all the things that you can do in an Excel spreadsheet, except now you're writing SQL code to be able to do that in a table in a relational database. You have data definition language. So think of data definition as describing the data and the data objects that store the data. So in relational databases, you have those columns, and then you have data types. So you're defining what's the name of those columns and what data is allowed to go into those. So you're defining in the data definition language, you are defining those tabular structures that store the data, and you can create those tables. You can alter those tables so you can rename the columns or add columns. You can drop the table or drop columns out of it, or you can truncate the table. So truncating the table means just clearing all the records out of it and storing that structure so that you can insert new data. So it's not it's kind of deleting the data, but it's keeping that structure intact so you can reinsert new data. So I like to think of like the database itself is like a big canister with all of these Excel sheets inside of it. And then you can either, manipulate the language. You can do a lot. You could obtain the data, clean it up, insert or delete, or you could delete, or you can delete columns, delete sheets, stuff like that. When I say we covered DCL and TCL, these are more database administration functions in a relational database. So your DCL controls data and access to data. So grant and revoke is all about permissions and user permissions. You'll see in this class that I've set everybody up. Within a database or within a server, you have user accounts just like you would in a lot of systems, and you log in with the username and password. And then here you're granting access to those user accounts on what they can and can't access. So you'd say, can they access this database? Then what type of access do you want to give them? And you could revoke that access also. TCL, it's really for applications. It's like when you are processing a lot of transactions and they're coming in really fast, how do you make sure these things aren't corrupted or inserted in the wrong ways? So you can have like save points. You can save a table at a certain point. You could roll back to a certain point where you can commit transactions. We really won't learn about that piece in this class, but it's one of the components of SQL. We don't learn about it here because those are more about applications instead of much more than working with data. All right. So what is a database? A database is a collection of information that's organized so it can be easily accessed, managed, and updated. So I've said it in a couple different ways. Probably the most elegant definition of a database is that collection, like a canister that allows you to organize data and other database objects that can be easily accessed, managed, and updated, especially database tables. So the advantages of storing data in a database is that you have security. You can put those controls that we talked about on it. Data integrity. So data integrity, you can define columns, what data types go into each table. Customization, you can create a lot of different types of data structures for your data needs. Recovery, so if you deleted a table, hopefully you have backups of that. There's a possibility that you can recover data in a database instead of it being gone. Persistence is one of the keys of a relational database. So if you store data in a relational database table, if you log out and you log back in, that data still stays there. or even if you shut down the database server and start it again. So the data persists in those tables unless you were to delete that table. That's a key because you aren't always 24/7 working on it, and data doesn't just disappear. And then data sharing. So if you have all these tables and databases, you can share it fairly easily with where everybody has a common database that they can go to as analysts. Some of the disadvantages is that you have to learn SQL programming language. I don't think it's that much of a barrier. Oftentimes, you're learning new technical skills as whether you're in tech or data anyway. That's easy for me to say. It can be abstract. So later in this class, when we're joining data sets together, you really kind of need to think about how the relational database is working to bring all that data together and write the query that you need for it to bring it back in the way that you need it. If you have a database server, you have some maintenance and development costs, but since we have ours on the cloud helps with some of that also. So not that many disadvantages, and just widely relational database management systems have been used for a long time because of those advantages. All right. So what is a table? So you have databases, and they're arranged to store tables within those databases. So the tables are any display of information in tabular form with rows or columns named, like that first example that we did on the first slide. That's showing what is SQL and what's a relational database. Let me try to follow with my cursor. So I lose my cursor. This screen is so big. Anyway, over at the first bullet point on the right, you see how you can create a table, that tabular structure. So you can use the create table statement or that clause, and then you're creating a table named students. You have your fields within it, those columns, and then the data that you can store within each column. So you can create that tabular data structure to be able to store data in it and for it to persist. All right, so your columns and fields are the set of name values that define the data within the table. So within that student's table, you have first name, last name, and age. Those are your name values. And then you have the data types that can be stored in those fields. So like first name, you could have a character, variable character, up to 255 characters in length. And then your age would be like an integer. So you'd be 1, 2, 3. I'm 43. So you can store that information that way. And then rows are each single instance of a transaction or a single data item within a table. So this over to the right, there's an insert into students. So this is going to insert a new row or record into that table. So you can use these terms interchangeably. Columns and fields are the same. So you can have columns in your table, or you can call them fields, or you have rows or your records. You can use those interchangeably. So you're inserting these records into the student table with these under these column names. And then you'd have these values. So your first name, last name, and then age of each one of those. And then once you insert them, those are in there until you were to delete them or do something else. Delete the table or delete those values or change those values. Okay. So what types of data types can you use within a relational database table? So there are a number of them. We talked about them as an introduction here to this lecture, but this is a more comprehensive look at it. So you can have numeric, you can have date and time values, character and string values. Unicode, characters, and strings. So Unicode is like a special type of character encoding that you can use, similar to character and string, but it's a specific encoding for, how would I explain it? Certain types of applications or web pages and stuff like that. You can use binary, so that's like computer language, your ones and zeros. And then you have some miscellaneous data types that you can store. I never really use these miscellaneous data types to store. Maybe there might be another way to store it that's better, but data, especially new databases, offer ways to store this type of data because it commonly appears. So like XML or JSON or blob, think of them as just like big, huge text files that you're storing as values within a database table for different purposes. The most common are definitely these three here at the top. So with numeric, you have a couple of different types of integers. So integer, I want to say is like 16 bits. So it'd be up to, you can go to like 100 million, you can go more than 100 million. But with an integer, you could go like plus or minus 100 million. And then you have smaller ones that you could use too. Maybe this goes to like 100,000. Tiny int would go to like 128, and a bit would be like a 0 and a 1. So you can store numbers in different ways, integers or decimals or floating point values. So floating point would be like your decimals and floating points are similar, but you can define decimals a little bit tighter. So a decimal, you might do that as money. So it'd be like, you could define it as a decimal 9,2, and that'd be like a money with like 9 places in front of the decimal to the left of it, which would be like your dollars, and then the 2 to the right of it, which would be your cents. We'll see some examples of that. Your float's more of like open-ended scientific calculation, like 10.9634. And then you could do real values too, but decimal, integer, and float is what I use by far the most. Other ones you can store for specific reasons. You can use other data types for specific reasons too. With date time, I use all of these different ones. You can store date, which would be like a calendar date. Like today is 10/20/2025. Your time, you could store that as, usually it's military time. So right now it's 7:50 p.m. So it would be 1950 in military time. You could also format that and store that in a couple different ways if you wanted to do AM and PM. Date time is just your date and time combined into one field, which can be useful, which would be somewhat similar to a timestamp. So timestamp would be like your time, not just the hour and minute, but also seconds and milliseconds and so forth. Sometimes useful in transactions that are captured within milliseconds of each other. And then you can even store a year. So year is like a 4-digit integer almost. It's often stored as an integer, but you can also store it within a year in MySql and then do different things with it. Then your character and your string values is that these are all these character, variable character, and text. Well, variable and variable character, you can define how long you want those to be. So a character, that you have a state, and all those have state abbreviations, which all have 2 characters. You can define that as a character 2, and then store Iowa, Nebraska, Nevada, Texas. You can store all those states. So character is more of like when you want to have an exact value of characters, and you want like all of those values within that field to be the same. Variable character is often when you want to store names that have variable lengths to them, and then you want to set a maximum. Like earlier, we saw variable character at 255. That gives you like plenty of room for like a first or last name, as long as those names don't go over 255 characters, which I don't know anybody's name who does that. So plenty of storage there, but it's for those type of, it stores it in the tables a little bit better for those that are longer or shorter. Varchar max is just the maximum amount. I forgot what that amount is, but it's super long. It's like, must be like 10,000 characters or so. And then your text is just like open-ended text. So if you think of, like, say a form field on a website, somebody filled that out with a text comment, maybe it's a paragraph, you can put that in the text field. Those are the most common ones that you use, particularly numeric date, character string, and particularly for analytic purposes. So I got ahead of myself. These are actually like the minimum and maximum values for like the most common data types. You see these integers and big integers. What is this? For the integer, the maximum and minimum you could have is like 2,147,000,000. And that's negative and positive. So that's for an integer. And you have these floats and the doubles and dates and so forth. Date times. And then characters. So you can have up to 255 length characters and variable characters and so forth. I thought the variable character was longer than that, but you can have it up to 255 characters, or you can do a text where you can store like 65,000 characters. So that's how you read these, and these are all the most common data types. It's just good to refer back to throughout the class, this table, when you're creating a new table and you want to store data. And you say, which data types do I want to use for the fields that I created in a table to capture that type of data. So some of the notes over here, it's not just ones and zeros, but you can have strings, integers, and decimals from pretty close to negative and positive infinity. Dates and times. I didn't highlight what those mean over here, but some of this formatting. Try to bring my cursor over again. And it disappeared on me. So if you see over on the left side, like your date time and your date stamp. So let's just go with date time first. So your date time format would be your 4-digit year, your 2-digit month, your 2-digit day. That'd be the date part. And then you could do hours, minutes, and seconds. You could also use timestamp, where it combines all those together. So similar, but timestamp will go even farther than seconds. It would go to tenths, hundreds, all those different milliseconds. Then you have a few different types. This would probably get you just using these data types and understanding what they were. It's at least like 99% of the columns that you would ever create in a relational database. All the other ones are usually for really special cases like XML or JSON, or maybe you would use blob in certain circumstances here. Okay. So SQL best coding practices. So there's not a lot of universally agreed on. Like I've had students in the past who took Python first, and then Python has their coding standards of like how to space things and how to do capitalization, how to do comments and everything. There's not really that with SQL coding. It's usually organization by organization. However they find their code to be the most readable and what their developers like. But in this class, we will use a best practice, with some of these things over on the right. For a full set of best practices, there is a SQL style guide out there that makes a recommendation. It's not really agreed upon, but we follow them pretty close, and then we'll follow them pretty close in this class. So in this class, I'll give you a SQL file where you capitalize all the SQL clauses, keywords, table constraints, and functions. So you haven't learned all of those terms yet, but the SQL clauses are things like create table and insert table. You can even see it in the notes. You do lowercase on some of the values and the column names. So column names would be the F name and L name. And that helps like those keywords stand out and help you really see the structure of the query. I think we have, like at the beginning, you have the one keyword is select and the other keyword is from. So SQL clauses, you'll use some functions like sum functions. We'll put all those functions in capitals. And when you create tables, you'll have table constraints. So we'll see that in a couple lectures. We'll capitalize those. We'll lowercase all field names and table names. So we did that. Here, if you see the create table, students is a table name, so we do lowercase, and your field names are first name, last name, and age, all in lowercase. We'll use an underscore when defining multiple part columns and table names. I do that as much as possible in this class. It doesn't always happen, but in general, if we're doing a two-part table name, if we did students underscore grades, maybe it's like it's like report cards. Instead of doing students, you'd use students underscore grades instead of combining it all into student grades. If it's like a multi-part table name, which happens sometimes, we'll try to use underscores. Keywords used as field names are encased in brackets. In MySql, we will do that. We'll have some quotes that we put around it also. And then we put each SQL clause on a separate line. So already in this, I violated that because generally you would put the select clause first and that from would go on the second line. So each clause that you have, you put it on a separate line. And we actually do that down here with an insert into clause and then the value clauses on a different line. Okay. So that's largely it. In the second lecture, we'll learn a little bit more about how these are structured, how queries are structured. Let's see if I have one in my notes here real quick. I think I do. SQL coding best practices. So this one's kind of hard to see. That's really hard to see on the big screen. But within, if you have that PowerPoint from the lecture, there'll be some notes in here. Is that you have each one of these clauses, a select clause, which says what columns you want to get from that table. You have a from, which defines which table. We'll learn more about where and clauses in the next lecture, but where is like your limiting clause, like your country is equal to United Kingdom. And then you have some more criteria that limits the data that's coming back, but you put each one of those on different lines. So you use that as much as possible in this class and the examples. And then wrapping this lecture up. Where can you learn more about SQL? There are a number of resources out there. I always tell students personally, I think Mary and I were talking about it before class, is like the first time I'm learning something, I really like to be in class. But nowadays there's so much content and materials out there that it'd be your preference the way you like to learn it. I personally like the first time is like harder for me when I'm learning it, but if it's like somewhat familiar, I like to just go out to all these resources or even use generative AI to be able to do some resources, or you could potentially ask it for resources also. But I provide some here. You could take other short courses, which are great. Documentation is usually a little bit harder to read, but there are reference manuals and lots of examples. Reddit and Stack Overflow, if somebody's ever run into a problem, I'm sure that they posted it and they're like, Hope Community, I don't know what's wrong with this code, and then they tell you. Interactive tutorials, W3 Schools, I highly recommend that. That's just a really good website with all the basics. I'm going to bring it up. Ooh, if I can pull this over there. Okay, there we go. This is like my favorite website for learning. Or even if I forget, if it's like some thing I hardly ever use, and I want to remember how to use it in MySql, there are all these different things. You could do SQL syntax, and you can even click on these themselves to see what the code does. If I wanted to run like select star from customers, it already has a database and tables loaded. You can see what the query does. And then it has all sorts of different examples. So this is like a site that has like a bunch of interactive examples at W2 Schools. It's been around for a long time, but it's my favorite. If you want to look more about aggregate functions, you want to know more about sums or counts, which we'll learn more about in this class, you'll have other guided examples. So it'll like introduce you to the topic, and then you can work with it. Like statements, we'll learn later on, and it even goes into joins, and then some advanced topics down here at the end. Stored procedures, which we'll learn near the end of class and stuff like that. So it's super comprehensive of what we learn in this class, and it gives you like another resource to practice and see how it works. It's w3schools.com and then /SQL. Almost all these things you can ask ChatGPT or ask Claude too, but I still go to this website. I have a think of it at the top of my head and just go get an example of how it works. SQL Zoo is more of like a game-like structure. Lots of interactive tutorials here. Database performance is like we'll learn near the end of class on how to structure queries for performance. Tutorials and books. If you still like books, there's some of the classics like SQL Beginner's Guide and SQL in a Nutshell. And interactive videos. I have done almost all my AI learning from like interactive videos, combination of large language models, generative AI, and watching videos. There are all sorts of good resources out there. The sandboxes are places where you can write queries without having to worry about breaking anything. And I do that the best I can on our server too. Those are good resources for learning. Oops, try to get back over there. And then a few additional resources too. All right, so that is the end of the lecture. I'll give everyone a 10-minute break because I don't think setup will take that. Setup's not too involved. And then have a little heads up for the next lecture. We'll start to write queries and practice those clauses that we learned today. How you can manipulate data, get exactly back what you want, how you can summarize data, practices using comments and commenting out code, and then lots of SQL examples in MySql Workbench, which we will install tonight. So let's go ahead, take a 10-minute break. We'll start back at 8:17, and that should give us a good amount of time to install SQL Workbench. We'll connect to the MySQL server, and we'll run our first query tonight. All right. "45 minutes ago. Be back. Yes, it's 7:17, so 9 minutes.
I went online to try to figure out what SQL was today, and I was like, because I did look for the data visualization, that's not, I would, it would have made more sense. I would have had a basic understanding. And then I could
Oh, did they have you write a SQL query in Tableau, like to blend
so
data
Tableau,
sources?
but I didn't even know what Tableau was, so I'm like, okay, let's go, figure out what we are about to do, and it was overwhelming what was out there. I'm like, okay, I have to put this
That's why it's kind of good to have like a guide, like as much as somebody like having a guide through the first time to learn something, because the information can be overwhelming. Means that I'm a really good learner, but just like that with AI.
See, so my daughter, I'm like, I don't even know how to use ChatGPT. And daughter said, Mom, just go put it in your, go Google it and it. I'm like, oh. I mean, I just don't use it. So I could, but I'm like, well, you know, I just never have. So a lot of things that I'm afraid to use, I'm trying to overcome my technology fear. I'm like, I'm trying to understand it.
Yeah, I get it, where people would be afraid of it. That's one of the things I do now. With AI, a lot of it's just coaching people not to be afraid to
Right.
use the tool, what it actually is, and how you can use it, and how it makes your life better. Or make your life better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of times all you hear the news is the negative. You don't hear the positive.
Yeah, you hear the negatives, and these things can be super complex too. It's like, what is even AI? What does that like even mean? It's not actually that easy a question to answer. Even for me, now that I've been doing it for a year. Technical subjects are hard, they can be intimidating. That taught math and statistics in the past, and people are afraid until they start getting it, or you're just kind of, as much you're guiding them or helping them along until they have the confidence or it clicks. They're like, oh, I get it. The underestimated part of technology, how guides and mentors and people will help you and bring you along. That's what I do. That's what I'm doing now with my AI consulting. Only a fraction of it's about the technology itself. Yeah. You could build all that stuff, and if nobody uses it, it doesn't matter. Right?
Exactly.
Everybody's like, oh, this is stupid, or I don't see a point in it, or I don't want to learn about it.
Right.
Took me a while to figure that out. I'm like, but I built something awesome. And just like, no, I don't see the value in it. I don't want to use it.
Or the end user, like, you'll have something created and you look at it, like, it's not user friendly. So it's not valuable, it's not a valuable tool. It is a valuable tool in that it provides data, but I can't get to the data because the way that I'm supposed to use it, so it's not valuable. And there's a system.
Yeah, interface design.
Yeah,
Usually important.
so there's a system that I should use, so that if I use that system, I could get information right away. But the way that the system is designed, unless you work in that arena, none of it makes sense. It's not common sensical
That's why with data, you have to work with people to see it like
way,
the way each other see it instead of it being like a technical person.
right?
And then delivering something and they're like, oh, that's not useful at all. That's not what I was looking for at all. Even more important with data, I think. But as a project manager and then product managers, that's what it's all about. Product managers. Even product managers it's harder. Some places it seems like they make you do all that stuff and be a project manager on top of it.
Well, a lot of places don't understand the difference between product manager and project manager.
Yeah.
And they don't understand the difference between project manager and program manager.
And we, back in the
A lot of
day,
misunderstanding.
they didn't even use the project management tool. Like the online tool, when we first started doing it, you just had to follow the methodology. And then they introduced this tool, and we were like, hey, these gonna mess. So we had to learn. It was just a big deal. We're like, you know what, I'm gonna just go with it. I'm gonna do big sound, it's gonna go.
My biggest part as an AI consultant right now was education and adoption. More than the technology itself. Which I don't mind. I like delivering things that make people's lives better, solve problems. They just have to get the other person to see it.
Exactly. You gotta get them to recognize, like, oh, this is a good.
Or sometimes in the past, solve things that I thought were a problem that somebody else didn't see as a problem. Making sure you're on the same page with that. I'm like, what, you don't care about this? Nope. Might be useful, but if they don't see it as a problem, I'm not going to use it.
So I'm looking to a bunch of ETL and how to write basic SQL. I'm like, what the hell is ETL? How you trying to help me understand what this is? If you
Extract, transform, and load.
I teach it in the data engineering classes.
So I'm doing my research on this
ETL.
class. I'm like, what? See, this is confusing. So I said, like, just stop while you're ahead. Okay, just get the basics and keep it.
I did.
So basically, you have data in a source system, let's say, like in my industry, the core banking system, okay? If we're going to use that for business intelligence purposes, we're not going to run our business intelligence processes against our production core banking database. That would be a poor choice, right? So we extract the data from the production core banking system, and depending on the situation, we then either transform the data into things that will then be meaningful from an analytics perspective. Some of what we were doing with Charlie would be examples of transforming the data when we were aggregating it.
So you create a test environment. So
And then you load it into whatever platform you're going to use then to do your analytics.
Yep.
right. I'm like, oh man, okay, I'm over it.
Yeah. I originally had it in this class, but it was a little much. I just focus on SQL now, but I teach that in data engineering classes. How to get data out of systems and then transform it and load it for analytical purposes. It's more of a data engineering task. You probably, at some point as a data analyst, you probably run into that, but that's for then. Usually you have a day, oftentimes, well, depends on the place, but a data engineer would do all of that for you and load it into a analytical data mart or something for you to use. You could just query it using these skills. I focus on what it takes to be a data analyst instead of data engineer in this class. Data engineer is that whole other set of technologies that I showed at the beginning of class.
So now depending on
In data management.
You'll see instead of ETL, which is traditionally the way that was always done, you'll see ELT, where you extract the data from the operational system, load it into whatever system you're going to use for analytics, and then do the transformations once it's in the system.
Yep.
And so you load everything you need, or everything you could possibly need, but then once it's loaded,
That even includes like
manipulate it and piece it out
images
for-
and text and everything. That I teach data lake in the cloud engineering class. Not for this class either, but yes. There's so much to learn about data. This is a start. This is the start of the journey with the most used technology in data. We're in Python, this, and data visualization. And that's a decent start because you're able to visualize data and communicate it. You're able to manipulate it and store it in a relational database for analytical purposes. And then Python's kind of like your do everything tool with data, like all the other stuff. Like if you have a process and you need to like clean data and then store it in a database or do analytics on it, you can use Python to do it. That's why we teach those 3 classes in the business intelligence sequence. It's because those 3 itself we feel make you a pretty good data analyst.
That's pretty much.
And then all that other stuff is you're starting to get into like data engineering, data architecture and stuff like that. It's advanced topics for that reason.
So it's a combination of the three that would make you a data analyst.
Yeah, these 3 classes that you learn in this BI, the BI track in Data Science Academy. Those are the classes I teach. Let's see all the courses. I was just showing the classes I teach. Because I'm in the author section.
How many people or corporations use data analysts?
A lot. One of the things I would promote here is lots of people ask like how you can get a job doing this. So like as a data analyst. And it doesn't have to be in IT necessarily. You could be on an operations team or a marketing team. And if you have like a data analyst skill set, you can be really valuable in those departments. Or I started my career in banking, and I would say that as like a data analyst, like a financial analyst. But like analyze financial campaigns and stuff like that. I wasn't really in IT because, well, you need to know technical skills. It's just important to know the business context of when you're working with data, like how the people in marketing would actually want to look at it. That's why a lot of places get frustrated with it being in IT because 1, they're kind of slow, and then 2, probably don't really understand the context of the data that's needed or how it needs to be transformed. They'll just give you something and they'll be like, oh, that's what you asked for. You better put in another IT request. Say that's what you asked for. The processes don't align with data quite as well. Even though a lot of you'll end up in IT a lot of time because you're close to systems. But usually you're in a department. I used to do call center consulting. I know I'm a little bit past time, but we still have a little bit of time. I did call center consulting for West, and I did like data analytics and everything, but there are a ton of people in the call center, managers, team leads who use data skills, learn data skills for their jobs. Did you? What'd you do?
The first time I did infomercials when I worked for them.
Oh, yeah.
So they had a facility in Lincoln, and then they had one here right out of the interstate. Which I think it's like Blondell, Dodge.
Yeah.
And we did the infomercials for whatever. George Norman is great.
I forgot that they did that.
And then the second time I worked there, because I always would go there and get a job. So cash.
Yeah, their call center, they had seasonal people who would work from home. That was like revolutionary then.
And I did a pharmacy, so online pharmacy where there was a pharmacist and a nurse, and we would get phone calls in to distribute medication to people all over. That was interesting.
I can't remember. Yeah, they had some of those programs too. There's one we were doing predictive modeling for customer churn on it's like CVS or something, but it wasn't CVS. It's like one of those mail order programs. Medicine programs were looking at what customers were most likely to churn in 90 days. And you send them text message or whatever the action might be, reminders. Usually they had text messaging there too. But yeah.
No, I was in the facility that shut down on Bedford, that is now DHS. That's the main facility that I worked at.
Yeah, I remember that was open. I'd been over there before too. They still, well, no, it's Alorica now. West has lots of problems as far as being able to adapt to make the changes that they needed to change. They're too big and bureaucratic.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say.
They couldn't change,
No, they
and they
didn't change.
became too expensive.
Yeah. It took them too long to change with the times. Because we were still doing manual downloads. By the time I left from Bedford, they had just implemented where you could call from your desktop.
Yeah. They were cutting edge for a while, but they lost all of that and became bureaucratic and fell apart. But anyway, no, with that, all that said, is that it's some of the most applicable because I tell people if you currently have a job and you're in a department, just offer to start doing reports and stuff with data and use SQL skill, your data skills there. Because I'd almost guarantee that you're going to be the only person who wants to do that. Like people are going to be like, I don't want to work with data. You can just have it. Like, or it'd be like, and then you can gain more and more responsibility and use your skills and everything. You don't have to be in tech with this job. You could be an analyst, operations analyst, or you can just be a manager or a lead who needs to put together reports and stuff like that. Or just ask like a manager there who has a bunch of reports. You see a big Excel sheet, be like, can I put that together for you? Or automate it. Just whatever role that you're in, just ask if you could do something with data. And then use your skills. So what was I should get started on this, but that was the whole thing, like where would you use data analyst skills? Or where would you be a data analyst? It could be anywhere within a business that uses data. And the more data driven those businesses are, the more they could use those skills. Data analyst is probably the most applicable, and they're probably those positions all over Omaha. They're kind of hard to get into. So that's why I say if you work somewhere, then just offer to do data. If you go to a big company, and when they have data openings, just apply for them. It's hard to interview for these things. Or be an outsider and interview for them and get the jobs. That's why I wanted to do the mock interviews here on the last class and see how it goes. It's better if you're already an employee and you see like a data opportunity for data and then just offer to do it. Or the need just comes along, right, Mary? Like all of a sudden there's all this need for data and somebody needs to do it. Those are probably like your best opportunities. All right, let's finish this up. So let's try to get set up tonight. So I have a couple files here. I'm going to have you download 2 of them. There's this examples PowerPoint SQL. You can see it's listed by lecture and slide. You have these different queries. When we get to those slides along the way, you can copy and paste this into MySql Workbench, which we'll install tonight. And you can run these queries and see the results. So you'll want to download the examples PowerPoint SQL. And then you'll want to download the setup instructions for MySql Workbench. This is what we're going to work on installing tonight.
And that's in slide.
Yeah.
So I'm in ODSA. And that's where
Yep. It was in ODSA in the SQL 101. And if you scroll down to the bottom, you'll see those attached files. And you'll want to download the examples PowerPoint. and then the MySQL Workbench install. MySQL Workbench is the interface that we'll use to connect to the MySQL server. We'll use a username and password, and then once you're in, you'll see all the databases inside of it.
So I'm not exactly sure because it appears that it has the title.
Oh, this one? The files?
Yes. So I have code from class, the one PowerPoint and installing.
You don't have the MySQL Workbench installed?
No.
It's something else?
But it's under data manipulation, SQL.
She's in the LMS.
Oh, you're in the LMS.
There's a thing on this to click and it says MySQL install, go down. But it comes up with two of them.
Let's
but
see.
they have the same-
It might not be the same file in here right now either.
The files that are in the LMS have not matched exactly what you would want for
Exactly.
the class.
That's true.
Okay,
So if you can go into Slack,
I can't get in the Slack for some reason, it's not like.
It's okay if you follow along with these instructions as we go. It'll be okay. So yeah, this one's a little more of a visual description of how to install it. But if you do this, to install MySQL Workbench, if you go to this URL, the dev.mysql.com downloads and Workbench, you can install the most recent version, which is version 8.0.43. So I take you here because in the past we've had people use Windows or Mac OS, and we even had somebody use Linux once. But you can select your operating system, which is usually Windows. And then you'll have a download. And then once you download it, you can run the installer. You don't have to log in. You say no thanks, just start my download.
So sign, which one to select it.
Oh, which one to select?
those two big buttons, there's a little blue line that says no thanks, just start.
Yeah. Right. It's kind of nice that they don't make you do that. Most places do.
Want us to, which is why the buttons are.
I have a web
huge and
account.
No thanks, is teeny
Yeah.
tiny, you can't find it.
I'm like, where?
Zip file.
Once you do that, it's pretty straightforward. You can do all of the default settings for the installation. So it would be in my downloads folder.
Yeah, I just downloaded the zip file, what do we need to actually install it?
If you have Windows, you can right click and hit extract all. And if you do, it should appear with a folder. It didn't give you that option. One other thing you can do, you can go inside of here. You can click on that file you downloaded, go double click on that, copy that folder that's inside, and then you should be able to paste it here.
So which one is the installer though? So I extracted everything, but now I just got a bunch of files.
Oh, is that the source file? Is that why? Yeah. We need the installer. I clicked on the wrong one. What did I do? Did I give everyone the wrong link in that file? Oops, hold on 1 second. Let me go back to Slack. Oh, yeah, it's because I left this on source code. Select operating system, Windows. There's the MSI installer. That's the one you want to do for Windows. I accidentally took you to the wrong one. And then that should be the installer. And then you can do that for Mac OS or Linux if you have it. But for Microsoft Windows, you should see this MSI installer. Should be, yeah, if you've clicked on it and it says that.
It's taken so long to, it's still out.
Okay, so if you do that, you should eventually see a window that's like this.
It asked me if I wanted to make changes and I said no, so.
So it aborted, you have to
Yes.
start it over again.
Oh my word.
Not too bad to start over again. If you're in it, you can say yes and then do these options by default. Just do complete. You'll say ready to install program and then you can hit install.
It says choose a setup type, server, kind, full, custom.
Full. Or wait. So I think that you could just set up the client.
Good thing we're not trying to use AWS.
Paint, yeah. You could run this in AWS and it'd be mostly the same.
I'm picking on them because of their massive outage today.
Oh, I had an outage today.
Oh, AWS, yeah, their US East region had massive failures, took down.
It won't let me get.
I didn't hear that from a client I worked with today. They use AWS. Not what it's on the meeting for, though. We don't use AWS because, or recommend AWS.
Okay. Which one of these? I got five.
What's that? Options?
They all say ready to go. My SQL Server 8.0.43, Workbench, Shell, Router,
Oh, did you hit custom when you were here in the setup wizard?
I hit full.
And do you have a Mac? No, you don't have a Mac. I didn't have a full option.
I have server, client, full, custom.
We can back up here for a second. Did you, when you downloaded, it was on this screen,
Yep.
and you downloaded the MSI this one? It says Windows 86 64-bit MSI installer. Because if you go through this, you should start here. It'll ask you to install, and then there's the complete and custom. You can just hit complete.
So that's what they really should have removed this, to uninstall this.
Is that one a work computer? Do you have a work computer?
No, this is.
No. I've had that before where we couldn't install because someone brought their work computer. And then you do complete.
It's telling me that I have 30 minutes.
Have 30 minutes.
No, 30 minutes today.
Oh, to download. Connection here is kind of slow. But it didn't take me 30 minutes. Oops, I don't need to install though. I just wanted to go through all the steps. Oh well, I guess I'm doing it.
Yeah, better to let it go than
Yeah,
not.
might be a more recent version than I have anyway.
Okay, so this, where am I supposed to be? This Windows MSI installer?
Yeah.
Alright,
And since I'm recording, I'll crop the end of this out. So if you don't get it tonight, you can still follow along.
okay, yeah, because I got two of these options.
I'm going to get through this real quick and help you out.
Alright,
Okay, so if you install, then it has launch MySQL Workbench now. I'll get back to you. Okay, so your MySQL Workbench. Should look like this after you install, except you won't have these connections here. It'll just be blank, but you'll see a similar screen to this. So what you'll want to do is set up your connection. Your connection connects you to the MySQL server so you can get to the database, to your databases. So to do that, I need to find my mouse pointer again. You will hit the plus sign on my connections. For connection name, you can give this whatever you want, but you can just call it MySQL ODSA. And then you'll have some connection information in this file. There's a host name that we want. That is, you notice it's like an internet URL. That's where our server, MySQL server is. You can copy that and paste that into host name. You leave that port the same. Your username will be your first initial and then last name. So mine would be J. Bergman. But if I was used another example from our class, so our Armani's would be A, right? And then you could test connection to see if it works. Yep, the password is just password1, all lowercase, and then number 1. Not too worried about secure passwords in this one. It might be a capital P. Uh-oh, what did I do? I might have to check everyone's login credentials. This is what I must have forgot something when I set everything up. So if you were to do this, it'd be first name and or first initial and last name. I'll just show you how this works. You do test connection. It says it works. When it asks you for a password, you would type in password1 as the password. I should have checked those. I should check those when I set it up today. And then if you're successful, you wouldn't see this many databases, but what you would see if I signed in with Armani's, you would see a database that has A right, and it won't have anything in this because this is where you'll create tables for this class. You create tables and store information in there and create views and so forth. There are 2 other databases that you should see, and possibly 3. One of them will be the World database. The World database is an existing database that has a few tables in here. It has like city information, world city information, country information, and country language, so the language that different countries speak. So if I was to just do a query, a little trick is that you can do a query by right-clicking on a table and select 1,000 rows. And then there's your query there, your select star, which will select all the columns from world.city, from that table. To run these queries, you can select the lightning bolt, and that will run everything that's there in your screen. So you'd have access to the world database, and that's how you'd run a query. There's another database called SQL. SQL is a little more involved database that we'll use for once we start to do joins. But this is like it's like Blockbuster, so it's like video rental system. And this is the database that has data in it. So it has information like actors and addresses and films and store locations and employees and stuff like that. One other one you may have is crypto, but I'm not using it anymore. But it may appear for you. I don't even think I have any data in there right now. So in some of the classes, I've done a predictive machine learning model using historical crypto data, but we won't use that for this class. So if you don't have that database, it's okay. Some of you will. But if you have access to SQL database, World database, and then your own database that has your first initial and last name, you're all set up. So it looks like I must have, when I set up the user accounts, I must not have the login permissions right. I'll have to take a look at that. I'll ask everybody to give it another try.
I thought Crystal sent me my first initial last name before one.
Oh, this is a different setup than what Crystal set up. So yeah, that one's to the LMS with that content. So I have some updates to do here and there also. But once you logged in, you should be able to get there. And if you did a query, select star from world.city. So this is the data or schema base or data or schema name and then dot table name. That's how you do that in MySQL. You can run that and that'd be, if you get these results, that'd be like your hello world query and you know everything works correctly. Maybe we'll help you out with the install.
It's installing now.
Or is it?
Because it says server, Workbench, shell.
What did I? So I have to fix up the users. If you have SQL Workbench installed, that's a good step. I just need to work on the permissions for logging in. It looks like I must have missed something. And then I'll let everybody know and then have everyone try to log in.
Is that it for tonight then?
Yep, the other thing is just to make sure that you've been able to log into LearnWorlds because I have some content to update here too. So so for tonight, I put everything into the Slack. But in the future, I'll have everybody go out to here to get the most recent data. But I need to update this too. But just make sure that you're able to get into LearnWorlds, and that's what it looks like. I'll be posting some videos out there too. I'll try to post this video where we do the install, the MySQL install, so you can follow along if you don't have it installed.
I got an error, but we'll shut it down all day, but some of it says, one thing says it's in here.
Let me see real quick. Does anybody online having any challenges installing MySQL Workbench? I was telling everybody here that I have to work. If you try to log in right now, you're probably going to get an error because I think I forgot to do some type of login permission. If you have anybody online have challenges installing MySQL Workbench and logging into LearnWorlds, let me know. I'll help you out. Okay.
What would you think with Tammy when you come over to Tammy?
Yeah.
Tammy 1, Tammy 2.
I do have a system on Tammy too.
This will be okay if you just install Workbench. If you set up all of these, your install's a little bit different. Let's see why. I'm not even glad. I'm sure why yours is showing up different than mine. Doesn't matter. Workbench shell rather. That'll be okay if we just install the client. They'll give you Workbench and then we'll be able to connect those tables. That still didn't work. What happened? Oh, not at this phase. Oh, I just have to do something on the computer so I can install it. Okay. Is there pictures or documents or anything? Guess it's a little budget. Maybe some something. Maybe able to. Yeah, that C drive is pretty small. Or her drive is pretty small. I don't know if people will install it. See if there are any programs we can remove. Just remove something. Let's see if you can use Copilot or anything. It's like an AI assistant. Which you can use for anything. I'm not sure. Anything else we can remove? It's trying to make some room so we can install it. Maybe that'll be it. Okay. Try. That didn't work. But I mean, client only. I'll cancel it because we need MySql Workbench installed. What else can we remove? That's very much it. And all the old charts in it. Transfer it out here. You have Tableau installed, but I'm gonna keep that on there if I can. Use OneDrive. Escape. Install whatever I can. This is something that is Microsoft data. What's that? Yeah, installed like an installer for it. It's not the full program. I guess uninstalling Tableau Public would probably do it. Let's see if we can do it without uninstalling trying to. I might have to though.
Did Crystal give you our certificates for the data visualization class? She said in her email we did post tonight.
Oh, no, I haven't seen her. I'll ask her about it though. Or let me see if it's on the desk back there or something. Oh. Okay, and I've installed Tableau Public. And then if you want, you can install it. Tableau Public's free. So you can install it like that. Purchase small. Here. That would be cool with this program is if some people need a laptop just to load everything that you need. Like all the classes. Let me see real quick if there's like some certificates back here. After that's done, we'll give the that over install a try. Certificates. Mary, I don't see anything. I'll ask Crystal about it tomorrow though.
Okay, yeah, I can email her, I'll just reply to her email.
I haven't seen her
She did some, put that in email.
in person since the meetup. It should work. Looks like it's gonna work. And once this installs, you'll be able to get Workbench pulled up. Yeah, just had to make enough room to get it installed.
See y'all next week.
So yeah, I'll send out a message once I get those permissions fixed up.
Okay.
Have you log in, make sure everyone's successful. See you on Monday, and I'll also ask about the start of Python class.
Perfect.
Okay. See you, Mary.
Yeah.
So I have.
Yeah.
MySql installed, but I didn't know which is
Yeah, this is a little bit different than what we had to, so if you go. That's installing. So let's cancel out of this and run it one more time, or run your installer. Okay. Then getting probably in your downloads. I always do that, no matter how long I use computer, I like click it, like it's gonna go faster.
Right. And I don't, this is so slow. I don't have anything on here other than school stuff.
Everything that goes on my computer and like mine's a new computer.
And that's all I was telling Charles when I said, oh, let me invest into another laptop, you know. This is an old one, but I don't want to invest into a new one, but I also,
That's okay, I'll wait for that to install it. See, I want to see if anybody online had any challenges. It doesn't look